welcome to fmtraining.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. I'm here with the wonderful Calvin Moseman. Hey, Calvin, how you doing?
Good afternoon. Doing well.
Good, glad to hear it. Calvin is one of our senior engineers at RCC and a really fantastic trainer on a variety of topics. He's been awesome enough to come on the show a couple times and talk about a wide variety of things. So, real quick, let's talk about our live stream training schedule. So today we're using the Execute FileMaker Data API to create and delete records. If you'd like to support the channel, we'd greatly appreciate it. We have our FM Training annual subscription bundles. There's basically three options here. This one comes with FileMaker. This one has all the videos, and I think it has the primary courses, so like the Pro Server and Go course. So every once in a while, I get people that come to me and go like, "Hey, your live streams are great. It's really cool that you're doing this with the community. I love the format is nice, but it doesn't really help me learn things. I really want to like start from the beginning, or I have a very specific topic that I want to see talked about. We don't want to put it on stream for whatever reason. That happens. If we've done the topic too recently, for example, we won't generally put it on stream. This course is pre-recorded. All the videos are really like tightly edited and they're very tightly on focus. We talk very specifically about very specific things. Pretty much everything basic in the FileMaker platform. If you're like, man, I really want to get into this, but I have no idea where to start, you can start here. It'll walk you through and you'll be well on your way to being an intermediate engineer by the end of it. Or at least knowing where to go look for answers if you have questions. So, with that all being said, I think we're probably good. Calvin, what are we doing today?
Today, we are looking at the Execute FileMaker Data API script step in FileMaker Pro. So in FileMaker 19, the new script step was added, Execute FileMaker Data API, and it allowed you to perform queries and do some other limited stuff. And in the latest version of FileMaker, we have some new features for adding and creating, or for creating, deleting, and updating records using it, which opens up some possibilities. And so this is kind of an overview of how that script step works and maybe give us some ideas of how we might be able to use it. So here is the Execute FileMaker Data API information in the help, Claris help. And we have all of the parameters that you can use in this. And this all has to be put in a JSON object. And we'll look at that. And then we have a few examples. So I thought we'd go through some of these examples and see how they worked.
I'm going to ask a quick dumb question first to start us off with. Can you tell me in like a sentence or two, what is DAPI?
It's data API. So here we have the actual, this is the data API information here, and API application programming interface. So usually the data API is what we use for a web page to talk to FileMaker. And at some point, developers said, it'd be really helpful to have these actions in FileMaker Pro, not just in the data API when we are connecting to server from a website or a web page. And so that was when these tools came into FileMaker. And so that's kind of a brief explanation of what that is. I like to think about it like the Execute SQL script step. At least initially it was like that because the Execute SQL script step did queries or does queries and select statements. And initially the data API was limited to mostly just queries. And and we've done live streams on that in the past. So we're taking it a step farther and not just gathering data. Now we are able to edit and change that data.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions before we jump in?
Nope, I think we're good. I just wanted the quick groundwork as to what we're looking at.
Okay, cool. So here we have our first example. And what I'm going to do is just copy this JSON right here. In our example, create a new script and type in execute, and then we have FileMaker Data API. And you have some options here. You can target where the results is going, whether that's a field or a variable. I'm going to put it in a variable just so we can see it real quick. easy to access. And then our request has to be in JSON. So we're putting it in this JSON object. I'm going to run this so we can see what that looks like. It's just saying action metadata tables. So we'll see how this first one works. I'm going to call this just metadata. So we see what this is. So I ran that. It didn't actually do anything besides run that request and put some data in our results. So this is the new results that just gave us. This is a lot of stuff here. Let me go ahead and say OK. And I'm going to use another function to make this a little easier to read. So set variable. And I'm going to just call this one by the same name, result. And if you're not familiar with JSON or these different options in FileMaker for JSON, I'm going to use the JSON format elements. And that just makes the JSON easier to read, puts a lot of white space in there. And let's put in our result. Okay. Let's try that one more time. So I'll run, and you'll notice we got some white space in there. Now when I open it up, I can see what's going on here in our metadata, which the metadata is describes the file. So we have our message here that just says, okay, that means it worked. And then we have our response here, our tables, and this isn't just the tables, this is table occurrences. So you see we've got our table name, our base table name, and the name of the table occurrence. You scroll down here. This is FM starting point, so there's a lot of these tables. And we can scroll on and on and on. And that's what the metadata is, giving us those table occurrence names. So there's reasons that could be helpful for some developers, but that's just kind of like our step one of what we can get out of the Execute SQL. Okay, let's look at the next thing. If we go back here, scroll down, we can point it to a layout and get some information from there. So let's try that. So I've got this layout example, and I'm just going to say run. Now, what's our response? Now, the response is layout is missing. So one important thing with the Execute FileMaker Data API is that you have to really be careful specifying what layout you're working on. So let's grab, I specified the layout as notes, and there's no notes table in here or notes layout in here. So let's see what happens when I just grab the layout name for this one and try that. Now that's a pretty big layout. So I'm going to put that layout name there, and I'm going to enable this format JSON elements so we can see this without having to run it twice. So you'll see this is a little bit different. So here's our data. Here's our message that it all went okay, our response. Here's our field data. So lots of record data here. And we see we've got all these repeating fields. Each field has the value given to us for that one as well. And then we have, if we look here, we've got portal data. So lots of information there, which may or may not be useful, depending on what you're doing. So let me go back to changing this to notes. And we'll see how this is working. Let's go to our layouts, and I'm just going to create a new layout and call it notes. And I'm going to point this to our note table and see what happens. Say browse. So now we're back to where we started, but there's actually a layout called notes, so we should see something. Go back to our data viewer for a result. And here we do have some information here, but you'll notice there is no, there's not a lot of, there's no like field and record information here because we don't have any fields on the layout. As we put those on the layout, then we'll see more results. So let's try that. So we'll put our field on here, and I'm going to just do the ID note. Run our script one more time, check this result, and now you see the field data that was empty before. Now we have a information in there. So our information is really restricted to what is on the specified layout. Another interesting thing, if we run this again, and let me bring this layout back. Let's go to accounts. Run this one more time. So you'll notice here that it ran, and even though we had to specify what layout we were on, we didn't have to be on that layout for it to work, which is interesting. And usually in FileMaker, we think about context being king, and everything has to be within the context of a layout. And then Execute SQL, that function kind of broke away from layouts being required. But with Execute FileMaker Data API, we have to specify what layout. And everything we're allowed to do is based on that, what is contained on that layout, on that specific layout. Do we have any questions before we look at the next example?
Yes. So basically, you're saying that you can run the script from anywhere, but in the actual script step itself, you have to specify what layout you're on. And even if you can run the script from context, it can only do stuff in notes when you specify like a notes layout. Is that what's happening?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And then we have two questions. Does it
Mhm.
count against your API usage for server?
That's a good question. I don't think so. This is an on server, so it's not actually talking to the server. It's running in FileMaker Pro right now. So no, it wouldn't have anything to do with server.
Okay. DAPI is a standard. It works in different databases? Question mark.
So there's different platforms will have different APIs. So with FileMaker, they call it the FileMaker Data API. So it's a REST API. It's not like it's standard. There's different versions even within FileMaker. We have version 1, version 2, and the but it's not like it's standardized across the board. It's a REST API though.
Got it. There we go.
And if you're interested more in the API guide itself, which this isn't exactly, we're just doing a similar call in FileMaker Pro, you can look at the FileMaker help for specifically the data API.
Got it.
Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay, so let's go to our next one, which is a simple query. And actually this one's another one that won't actually work because I copied it right from there. So once again, we have the layout is missing. So let's work together and get this working. And one thing you'll notice in their examples, they do these queries where they're putting the JSON in a quoted text, which I find is sometimes hard to update and debug. So I like to do it a little bit differently. But let's go ahead and create a products. So we're going to go ahead here and go to our layouts. And I'm just going to go down to products and create a new layout and call it products. This is T15. It's just going to be blank. Say open. Okay. And so FM starting point. It's also going to open up the detail on this one. Data entry. And we'll see that we have a quantity in amount in stock. So I'm going to copy this, go to browse mode, and paste this on here. And I'm going to remove this script trigger. I don't want the script trigger. And so now let's go ahead and I'm going to make this match my my app name. So let's put this as 39. I'm going to make the name in FileMaker match the or the name in the script mount and match what our name is in FileMaker. So I'll copy this, browse mode, and it's looking for everything that is less than 40, and then we're sorting by the stock. Okay, so let's try that. And if we go to our data viewer now, we should see our response, and it says, well, let's go ahead and do our formatting for these. I'm going to grab this, just copy it. Save that. Run it one more time. And so you see we have it gives us some record information, and this is directly based on what is in this layout. So now if I go over here and type in the product, put that in here, go to browse mode, run this again, look at our result. Now it has the name. So again, we see how it's very dependent on whichever layout we base this on. Now I'm going to change this one to new item. Run our script one more time. Look over here at our result. And now we'll see we've got two of these items. We've got the clamp that we had before and our new item. So this is performing that query, the feature that we had previously. Do we have any questions about that before we jump into these new items?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Will it catch layouts that are off the side of the layout? Like it's not technically physically
Oh,
available?
it's not visible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. So if it's on the layout, it technically is on the layout, even if it's off on the side. So let's go test that out. So I'm going to open up a new one, and we'll grab let's grab the creation date, and I'm going to move it so it's off. It's off. So it's not visible, but it's still there. So let's try that one more time. We'll open up our data viewer and see, and there is our creation date. So
Oh,
yeah, it did. The other instance where it's possible to see something that is off of a layout, is in the table view. So if I enable table view here and I select table view, you'll notice we've got a third field, even though it's not visible on the layout.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if it's on the layout, it technically is on the layout, even if it's off on the side. And there's a lot of scripting that we do where we want but like if we're inserting especially on mobile, I do a lot of insert from device as far as saving photos and stuff like that. And I will often do that off of the visible part of the layout. The field's still there. Back in the day, we used to hide everything up in the corner and give it just a 1x1 height and width. But now, because we're able to put things off screen, we can put it off on the side.
Got it.
Good questions. Anything else?
The fields must be in the layout to get it with with DAPI. So it's not enough the table has the fields, they have to be on the layout somewhere.
Right. As opposed to something like Execute SQL, where you define the fields, and as long as the fields exist, they work. We don't specify with Execute SQL. We specify the table.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions?
Someone's typing, but I'll grab their question when it appears.
Okay. So let's look at this this feature, we're able to create new things. So our action is create, our layout is note, and then so this is where you'll notice up here in that query I showed you, they're putting the array in quotes, which is a little hard to read and a little confusing. So what I do to make it a little more less fragile is I specify field data as a JSON object and it's empty. And then I can put stuff in that object as within that object. And if you cut this part out, it doesn't actually, I'll show you. I couldn't get it to work without specifying that first. So, oh, well, there it goes for me. Maybe it is unnecessary. Or maybe it's just unnecessary because there's not an array this time. Anyway, so let's go ahead and try this out. And I'm just going to run. Okay. And let's go to the notes and see if a new note showed up. Open this, go to the end, and let's look at our creation information. And so it doesn't look like this one was just created. Let's try that one more time. Oh, well, let's look at our result. Our result would tell us. The layout's missing. Okay, that's what I was hoping for. So what we need to do is make sure our note matches a layout. So I'm going to say notes because I know we have this notes that we created. Now I'm going to leave those fields on there. Now let's try this one more time. Now here we get a response. Here's the record ID. So it did create. Our message is okay. And what we get back is our record ID, which is great. So here is our new record. We had 4 before. Now we have 5. And you'll see here's the new record that I just created. That's great. So let me go ahead. I'm going to save that ID for a moment. So it's not super helpful to put in data, just create a record without putting any data in it, which in this case we didn't specify. But in this option here, I'm going to specify the field data as I'm saying get field name. So I'm telling it what field and what value. I just want to say new note. So let's try this one out. And let's look at our response. Oh, we do have 6. So what's interesting here is I didn't get an error. I was expecting an error. If I open up the text, well, now I'm getting confused because I specified this as new note.
But the actual field wasn't.
And the field wasn't on the layout. I didn't think that would work. That is
It's
little
internally inconsistent, it looks like.
Yeah, so I was expecting that to break it. Interesting. So it's only required sometimes, maybe? Interesting.
Well, it's weird because it's like it can't get information unless the field exists in the layout, but it can create information without the field existing on the layout.
Which, like now that we know that, that's kind of cool.
It is cool. It's a little odd, but it's cool.
Okay, so in this last example, I'm going to run this as if I'm in the accounts area. So we're looking at this account, Richard Carlton Consulting. I hear they're a good place to work for and really experts on FileMaker. I'm going to put in a new note on them. And you'll notice here that I'm specifying the ID of the primary key as the foreign key in notes. So when I run this, we should see, and there's our new note. So it showed up.
Nifty.
So this kind of has made me rethink like the way that we script these. So if we look at our script debugger here, add note, what does this thing do? Well, it sets a variable. It freezes the window. It goes to this data entry layout, which triggers a script. That's not good. We create a new record. We set the field. We commit the record. We set the variable for the new note. We go to the original layout. And we set another script trigger to go off. We check if it's what device it's on. Then we set the field, the ID with the current note. And then we go to this field so that you can start entering data. That's a lot around going around the block to get this.
Yeah, it's
And
more context.
essentially, we can do all of that in one step right here. And there's our new note, which is pretty cool.
That is. That
Now,
seems
if we look at, do we have any questions about creating those notes?
New records are created in a table and can be reflected / viewed in a layout. Someone talking about the whole interesting conundrum of it needs the layout to see the fields, but it can also go to the table and directly create things there without the fields being available. So
Yeah, I feel like with the FileMaker Data API, when you're creating, it actually has to have the field on the layout. With the real data API, in this, we're using a FileMaker script to call to function like the data API. So maybe it's not exactly the same. Maybe it's a little curious.
it is curious. Shegel James, how does it work with container fields?
Ooh, good question. I have not tried it with container fields.
Would you have to like base 64 it, encode it, and decode it?
Maybe. I'm not sure. So the other thing about this is that I'm not sure it saves time. I don't know if it's faster. Well, creating a note this way versus this way is going to be faster just because we're not doing all of that, setting off triggers and such. But I don't know that if you made the most lean new record script step, I don't know if if this is any faster than that. So we'd have to do some speed tests to determine how fast it is. But my guess is that when we get into containers, it's probably not faster. And another thing to keep in mind is using Execute SQL is really handy in some cases, but it does take a performance hit. It's not the fastest way to do some things.
Good to know.
Any other questions before we look at the next thing?
Yeah, someone just adding that they read something from Sliant that DAPI isn't faster than native FileMaker. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a limited, so it's cool that we can do it. And I think lots of the people who wanted it were using it in conjunction with like JavaScript libraries. So that could make more sense for those situations. But for me, it's just kind of an interesting new tool that we have. And I'm still figuring out how it's the most practical. So I'm going to take this ID here from our result, and I'm going to stick it in this update record. So when you update a record, you have to specify what record ID you're pointing to, which isn't something we always, and that's not the primary key. That's actually the record ID that FileMaker assigns to the record.
like the ID numbers that you can see next to layouts and scripts if you have the MBS plugin where it shows you what the actual script ID is.
Yeah, but this is a record ID. So the way you find the record ID is you use get record ID and then it gives it to you.
Oh, nifty.
So and that's how you would do it in FileMaker. With the data API, that's part of the results. So that's where I got that ID. And now when I say update, I'm just going to tell it the same command, except instead of create, I'm going to say update. I'm going to send it to the same place. And I want it to say updated text and give us a timestamp. So let's go ahead and try this out. So here you'll see it updated the text and put a timestamp in there. So we were able to create a record and update a record. And finally, let's delete a record. So I'm going to put that same record ID in there. And we can say goodbye to this really shortly. Actually, after the update, let's just check to see what the response was. So the mod ID, it doesn't give us the record ID back, but it gives us the modification ID, which is it's been modified once. If we go back over here and update it again, that mod ID, you'll notice, changed to 2. So that it keeps track of how many times it's been modified. So now let's go ahead and delete it. We can say goodbye. to our updated script. And there it goes. So we just went through how some basic features, some older features of the FileMaker Execute Data API with the metadata layout and query. And now we've gone through creating new records, updating existing records, and deleting records using the FileMaker Data API to do that, or the FileMaker Data API script step. Any questions? Any ideas how this could be helpful or useful?
We have a question. How would you find the record that matches a primary key and then update a field within the record?
How would you can you say that one more time?
Yeah, no problem. How would you find the record that matches a primary key and update a field within the record?
Okay, so and at this point I'm wondering what's the use case. So what we can do is go to notes. Oops. Is it called
Not
communicate?
called a
Okay.
note. What's it called?
It's called communication in notes.
Oh,
And give it a record ID. Get record ID. And there we go. Okay. So now all of our records have all of our records have record IDs that we can grab, or that we can view at least. So here's the record IDs. And if I wanted to make a button here that said like delete, or actually we could just change this delete button here. So right now it's doing who knows what. I'm just going to copy that and move it over here so we want to look at it later. So I'm going to grab this and point it to our delete note. And then in my delete note, I'm going to update this. So the record ID isn't hard coded. I'm going to point that to our notes, or our current note. How about that? And give it the record ID. So if I put in get record ID right here, it would give the account record ID, which we don't want it to delete. I don't think it would actually delete it though if we give it the wrong layout, or it'll delete the wrong record. Okay, so let's go ahead and select this note and delete it. And let's look at this in the script debugger just so we know we're doing it right. So here's our delete note, generates our request, run execute FileMaker Data API, and it is deleted. So in this case, we used a field with a calculation called get record ID to get that record. Does that answer the question?
David, let me know if that answers your question.
So that is one way of doing it. And alternate, what's that?
I said it's nice that it's an incredibly specific delete, so you don't really have to worry about navigating to the wrong spot. I did that recently, navigating to the wrong spot in the portal, and then whoosh, there goes a record that you didn't want to see gone.
Right. And there's no undo for that.
No.
Yeah. Good. Any ideas for how we could use this? One of the first things that I thought of, if we want to do this together, is creating logs. Because usually the logs, we just want to make them real fast. And I thought that could be an interesting thing to test out. So we've got our audit trail. And in this case, how does this, so we got our audit log by parameters. And this, using the, what is it called? FileMaker Execute FileMaker Data API. I believe it'd be a lot faster using that than to run this script, which actually sets each field individually. Maybe not, but let's try. We can go ahead and try it out.
Yeah, that would be fun. It'd
So
definitely
let's
be
go
less of a
ahead.
pain in the butt to script because you don't have to do each set field that you would need since it grabs everything on the layout.
Right, right. So what I'm going to do is grab these two scripts and look at each one of these. Another interesting thing about this is that you'll notice with this execute FileMaker Data API, we're just giving it we're setting a variable and giving it some data. So we could put all of this in a script parameter. And you could have one script that did a whole bunch of different stuff, which is interesting. At this point, though, I'm just going to put it right in the script so we don't have to worry about script parameters. So I'm going to say create. I'm going to send it to a log field or layout. And then I'm going to define our T22 and give it some information here. Here we can say ID invoice. Here, ID product, something like that. And so here we are setting that up. Let's go back to this one and put this in a new window. And then go through these, like the most important fields here. So we've got just paste a bunch of these. Okay, we got ID session, and we're going to say get session identifier for that one. Then maybe description. Let's do description. So we're still going to have to action. That's another one. We're still going to have to set these variables. Account name. Action. Okay, what else? Is there anything else we want to add in here? Oh, date. Is there a log timestamp? So I'm going to just leave it at that, and the rest of these can go away. So
Your ID session, yeah, it needs. Yep.
there we go. And the most important thing is the description. So description. And let's just give it a timestamp. And we'll call this action startup or something like that. And now, so we're saying we're putting all of this into one script, but you could put this in the script parameter. So every time you call the script, it would give you a different description or a different it would write a different log for you. If that makes sense. So perform script, and we'll put our log in there. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this. And then go to our log. Oh, you know what? I don't think I gave it a we don't have a log table or a log layout. So let's just create a basic one that says log on it. And now that we know that we don't have to put all the fields on there, I'm just going to leave it blank, which is really confusing, but that's okay. Try it one more time. And now if we go over to our log, which is here, well, we should see, it doesn't look like it worked. Let's try running it manually. See what error we get. So data viewer, what's our result? Oh, it says it was okay. Okay, so here's our logged in at 622. So this was this record, this last record here, and actually this one as well. This logged in at 143. These were both created with the Execute FileMaker Data API script step. And we could expand that to say whatever else we wanted to.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And you whipped that up.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go ahead and try it a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is remove this and say get script parameter. Okay, like so. And then put that as a comment just for, oops. There we go. For reference. Now I'm going to put this description in here instead of a variable. And then I'm going to put in the action here. And what was the action right here? That'll look a little better. And so now it's based completely on the script parameter. If I go to our startup script, I'll stick this in the parameter and run this once again, and we'll see the next one show up. Oops. Let's go back to that log layout. Oh, it's moving it over on the other screen. That's my problem. And now when we go back to our audit log, we'll see that we have another one for 145 created. So this one was created without specifying what in the script itself, what that record would be. It was all specified in the script parameter. So now if I run this, it's going to give me an error, 1710. And what's that error? That error, I believe, means the JSON isn't syntactically valid. So it's saying that there was no JSON, which it was empty.
Oh, okay. So the parameter was empty, so it didn't pick up anything? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so I moved the parameter. I moved the details to a script parameter and then ran it without that script parameter.
Got it. Okay.
So here, if you look at the request, it doesn't know what to do. So if we look at the request, there is no request. You'll see that the variable is empty. So when we get that, it's giving us a 1710 error, which is the JSON isn't syntactically valid. I was getting a lot of parameter value invalid when I was testing all of this, which is interesting that I didn't. I was expecting a 1708 error, but I got the 1710 error, which is interesting.
Huh. I wonder what slight difference tipped the pot in favor of the JSON instead of the parameter.
Well, this is the first time I've done one where it was the JSON was empty, the parameter was empty, so that probably did it.
We have a request.
Yeah.
We add a log time to compare the two script speed, like the get milliseconds. Is that what you're talking about, Labo?
Yeah. So like a start and end time.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what we'll do, that's interesting because we are running both. So set variable, and I'll say call this one start. And we'll say get current time UTC milliseconds. And at the end, we'll say total FM that data API. And we'll say minus start. Okay. And I don't know that we're actually running this script. I don't think we're running this to create that other log. So let's go to our startup script and look for the audit. So here, 9050 or 0950. So here is what's creating that log. FM script. Let's see what happens. So this one's a lot longer and it does a lot more. So let's see what happens. Ooh, and this needs to be global so we can compare it afterward.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
Does the other one need to be made global as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So these are two really simple ones. And oops.
You'd add the
And
parameter in, right?
oh, I was just running the wrong script. So run the startup. It's finished. Let's go over here, or let's go over here and see what the result is. So the FM script was about 30% longer.
Interesting.
But the FileMaker script is probably doing more than it needs to. It's not I'm not sure that it's doing everything quite as
Yeah, because the DAPI script might be doing less log
yeah,
action.
if they were doing all the actual processes, what was it? 0950.
Yeah.
So here, if we look at this, it's opening the layout, it's getting the script parameter, creating new records, setting fields, and then it does all of this other work. So I'd be interested to see if like we're kind of comparing two different processes, which makes me think that it's probably
The
doesn't
same.
make a difference. Yeah.
Well, what happens
But
if you canceled out all those bottom script steps and well, it doesn't matter. It's not really close enough.
what's that?
No, I was just thinking that if you could just what's the command? Command slash all the weird stuff that's not necessarily like important and see what
This
happens.
one?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try that.
For the sake of curiosity.
Right, right. So there, brought it much closer to our
Yeah.
61. So removing all those extra steps at the bottom, which we may or may not need, brought this and to be fair, that both of them are running really fast.
Yeah.
So it's running maybe 20% faster. There's a 20% difference or so, just about. But still, it's comparative.
Yes.
Any other questions or requests?
I don't see any at the moment. This has actually been quite cool. Oh, wait, could be used to create virtual lists.
It could be, but you'd have to loop it. I don't know if that would be faster than another way of creating virtual lists. Using the query, though, definitely could be used to create the Execute FileMaker Data API with a query to create virtual lists. That would definitely make sense. Well, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Calvin, for presenting. It's an interesting
Not a
topic.
problem.
I think
Yeah,
you
I'm
know
always
about.
excited about new features in FileMaker. So we just went over the FileMaker, Execute FileMaker Data API, and the updates to that script step that are new in FileMaker 2024. If
Yes.
you get any other ideas for how you could use this feature, I'd be really interested to hear about it.
Yeah, no, currently it's cool we have it. Always cool to hear use cases for it, specific use cases. So, with that all being said, thank you so much, Calvin. Seriously, always love having you on. Thank you, everyone, for coming to watch today. We will see you tomorrow for Christian Schmidt's Bring Your Monkey Bread questions. So,
Sounds good.
that being said, goodbye.